Chapter 3800. Yuzun's heart suddenly trembled fiercely. But following that, he was filled with doubts. Only. Yiqing Luo apparently didn't give him a chance to think deeply. Seeing the flames around Yuzun dissipating, without any intention to battle, she naturally wouldn't let go of this chance. Her lips curled as she leapt up and opened up both her hands. Since you don't intend to attack, then, it's my turn to take control. She raised her slender wrist, and when the glower flame fan opened up, endless profound energy surged out. At the same time, her cold voice reverberated in the sky. My little friends, come out and do some exercise. Following Yiqing Luo's words, a huge green dragon appeared in the sky, surging in the pitch-black space. Its entire body shone with green light, dignified and noble. The dragon's roar shook the entire space. A huge white tiger suspended in mid-air, its 4 paws were burning with raging flames. A pair of black tiger eyes stared menacingly at Yuzun. That king word on its forehead was shocking. Immediately following that, a huge vermilion bird spread its wings, giving off a sharp and clear cry. Its fiery red wings, overflowing with brilliant colors, dazzling the entire pitch-black space. Under the 4 huge sacred beasts, a black cheetah whose entire body was pitch black, its eyes glinting with a dangerous cold glint, arched its body as its fur stood up, like a sharp blade, extremely sharp. The moment this formation appeared, the entire empty space instantly became bustling with noise and excitement. A powerful and thick pressure enveloped everything in the surroundings. This. For sacred beasts, in addition to a cheetah beast's powerful pressure, was close to a spirit profound cultivator. Yuzun was so shocked that he almost couldn't stand still. He recognized the 4 different battle beasts hovering in mid-air at one glance. They were the ancient 4 great sacred beasts. This lady called Yiqing Luo had actually subdued the 4 great sacred beasts. He was extremely regretful. Regretting that in order to let his Lord Father value him more, he didn't investigate clearly and forcefully accepted this mission. This lady was simply not human. Totally not as harmless as she looked on the surface. It seemed like he was just a newbie who had come from the Nirvana realm to the Earth realm, and even the Sage Profound realm should be considered a beginner. Who would have thought that, time and time again, he would be shocked and overwhelmed with shock. It was as if all the good things in the world had gathered on her. The Dark Lord's fists clenched even tighter. Trash! As the beast roared and the hurricane raged, the wind howled. The Nether Prime seemed to have vaguely heard an enraged bellow by his ears. This voice caused the Nether Lord to suddenly wake up. His eyes widened as he looked around. His heart was filled with excitement and shock. However, he did not have time to search for the owner of the voice. The raging winds and huge waves set off by the 4 sacred beasts were already pressing down on them. 4 holy beasts and a mutated phantom beast with a dragon horn. Each beast had its own unique attack. They were entangled from all directions. The Nether Prime did not have any leeway to retaliate at all. The 5 battle pets were pressing down with an unstoppable momentum. The Nether Prime's heart had sunk into despair. Suddenly, a hurricane stirred up a monstrous black chi as it enveloped his body. The slight wave of chi that was suppressing his entire body's chi suddenly dissipated. Boundless energy gathered in his limbs and bones. The Nether Prime didn't have the time to be surprised. Where did this amusing change come from? Chapter 3801. The thick black chi surged like raging waves. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. Revered Lord's power had recovered. Moreover, it seemed like the power was much stronger than the profound energy which she had sensed earlier. The sinister chi also became thicker. It looked like the feeling of being spied on by Old Man Tsang was absolutely from the people from Secluded Palace. Could it be the mastermind behind Secluded Palace? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as her lips curled into an eerie arc. Since revered Lord was the son of the mastermind behind Secluded Palace, he was the young master of Secluded Palace. She wanted to see how the person behind the scenes could keep his composure. Yiqing Luo raised the glower flame fan in her hands as a boundless, terrifying, profound glow burst forth. Following the explosion of the profound glow, her figure was like a blossoming flame, or like an arrow leaving the bow as she leapt forward. The sky full of thick black qi was instantly covered by the demonic red glow. The 5 battle pets seemed to be in agreement with their master's display of might as they gave off a sharp and clear beast howl. The entire space of consciousness was stirred up by invisible air waves. Like the ripples on the calm lake surface, as it started to undulate. Heh, trying to attack. Do you think it's that easy? Revered Lord sneered as he looked at the scene in front of him. His twisted features were filled with a sinister black qi. Seeing Yiqing Luo and the 5 battle pets' attacks pressing towards him, Revered Lord's palms gathered together as his eyes were filled with an appalled sinister qi. The thick black sinister qi was like a huge wave surging. The surging red glow intertwined with the thick black qi. The 5 battle pets surrounded the surroundings. The scene was shocking. In the auction, everyone looked at the scene on the horizon in shock. They couldn't believe their own eyes. Heavens! What did I see? Surely this isn't an illusion, right? How could this be possible? The ancient 4 great sacred beasts. Those are the ancient 4 great sacred beasts, right? I didn't recognize wrongly, right? Azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise. Those are really the ancient 4 great sacred beasts. That kind of dignified bearing makes one look up to them. Those are absolutely the real 4 great sacred beasts. There are no beasts in this world who can imitate the 4 great sacred beasts. The crowd was in an uproar. No one had any vigilance left to pay attention to the surrounding corpse puppet goo. His eyes were fixated on the image in the sky, and he wished that he could charge in and experience the might of the 4 great saint beasts up close. No wonder Lady D is so fearless. Not only did she subdue the azure dragon, but she also subdued the other 3 sacred beasts. He must be the first person in history to have all 4 sacred beasts as his battle pets. Rumor has it that the 4 great saint beasts were the loyal guards of the godly emperor. Ever since the godly emperor passed away 10,000 years ago, the 4 great saint beasts also disappeared from the godly emperor's sight. Who would have thought that the legendary 4 great saint beasts would actually become a little girl's battle pet? If I remember correctly, rumor has it that even the godly emperor did not form a contract with the 4 sacred beasts, right? It's said that the 4 great sacred beasts are arrogant. They're willing to protect the divine emperor, but they're not willing to serve anyone. Who on earth is Lady D? To think that it's so powerful that it could even tame the 4 great sacred beasts. The crowd couldn't contain their excitement. They could be saved. The 4 great sacred beasts were here. They would have a chance to escape from this strange place. Chapter 3802. Suddenly, a sharp voice pierced through the sky and reached everyone's ears. Ha! A woman who sells her body and relies on men. What's there for you to treat her as a life-saving straw? The voice was extremely shrill, and it was laced with obvious jealousy. Amidst the shock and excitement, it was extremely out of place. Everyone followed the voice and looked in the direction from which it came. Standing in the center, which was also the safest area, was a group of about a dozen people. Standing at the very front were 2 middle-aged men who were dragging a woman. The woman struggled with all her might. Her pretty face was a little twisted, and her eyes were ferocious. She was stubborn and unwilling to admit defeat. I didn't say anything wrong. Why are you dragging me? Since she dared to do it, why would she be afraid of others talking about it? The woman shouted, if it wasn't for the overlord, how could a profound sky realm wastrel like her form a contract with the four sacred beasts? Isn't it all because of her face? All of you are so stupid to think of her as a savior. Pfft. Yu Jiwen, shut up. The woman's words became more and more rude. One of the middle-aged men raised his hand and slapped the woman. The woman's head was tilted. Blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. The middle-aged man's strength was obvious. After that slap, the middle-aged man looked at the woman with a complicated expression. He looked at his hand and the woman's swollen cheek. He wanted to say something. But when he caught a glimpse of the people around him, he suppressed the complicated feelings in his heart. He suppressed the complicated feelings in his heart and clenched his fists. He snorted heavily and turned his head away, refusing to look at her. Manager, you, how dare you hit me? The woman covered her face. Her eyes were filled with viciousness as she glared at the middle-aged man's back. Another middle-aged man immediately advised in a low voice, "Third miss you, calm down. Now is not the time to be impulsive. Calm down. What's wrong with me?" The woman. Yu Jiwen shoved the middle-aged man hard. Second steward, you don't think that just because the two of you are representing the Yu family at the auction, you can point fingers at me and tell me what to do. This young lady is the real master of the Yu family. Second steward Yu's face darkened as Yu Jiwen pointed at his nose and scolded him. It was especially so for the cultivators from the various great powers in the surroundings. Their gazes were filled with schadenfreude as they looked at them. Furthermore, he looked at Yu Jiwen as if he was looking at a fool. The two stewards felt a little embarrassed. He even began to regret bringing Yu Jiwen to the auction. Unable to accomplish anything, but only capable of ruining things. However, there was one thing that was right. Compared to them, Yu Jiwen was the real master. Second steward Yu suppressed the anger in his heart and comforted Yu Jiwen. Third miss you, our Yu family has already lost nearly 100 elites. If the weak cause more trouble, it will affect the Yu family. Second steward Yu spoke in an extremely low voice. But when Yu Jiwen heard that, she sneered and then sneered. Didn't they say that Yi Qing Luo is the savior? Since she's the savior, isn't it all her fault that our Yu family lost nearly 100 elites? She failed to protect us and failed to live up to our expectations of her. She's indeed just a slut who relies on her face, body and man. Chapter 3803. Everyone almost laughed out at Yu Jiwen's matter-of-fact attitude. They had seen shameless people but they had never seen such a shameless one. They had seen shameless people but they had never seen such a shameless one. Who said that Yi Qing Luo must protect their Yu family? Yi Qing Luo was willing to help, that was a form of friendship. Not helping, that was her duty. Why did it become Yi Qing Luo's fault when it came to Yu Jiwen's mouth? Was she thinking too highly of herself? Among the various powerhouses present, there were a large number of influential and respectable large powerhouses. A small Yu family totally disregarded them. They didn't say anything. Where did Yu Jiwen get her face from, to dare to say such words? Great Steward Yu and Second Steward Yu were so shocked by Yu Jiwen's words that their faces turned pale. They immediately pulled Yu Jiwen as their gazes swiftly swept past the crowd. When they saw the disdain in everyone's eyes, the two stewards' hearts turned cold. Let go of me. I want to expose that slut's true colors. Yu Jiwen didn't feel that she had done anything wrong. She was struggling and pulling, as she continued to shout. Haven't you thought about why the Overlord isn't in the Overlord's consciousness space? Instead it was Yi Qing Luo who was obviously not even in the sky profound realm, who was fighting with that strong practitioner from the secluded palace till now. Furthermore, Yi Qing Luo's profound grade was obviously too far apart from before. If her ability was on par with the Overlord, why would she intentionally pretend to be a sky profound realm cultivator? Yu Jiwen. Great Steward Yu was so angry that his face turned pale, as he raised his hand to cover Yu Jiwen's mouth. His hand had just raised up. Yu Jiwen had already blocked Great Steward Yu's arm. Why? Still want to hit me? Try touching me again if you dare. Great Steward Yu was so infuriated that his face turned red. Yu Jiwen saw that he didn't dare to make another move and her confidence increased. Everyone wasn't interested in the power struggle over at the Yu family. But towards what Yu Jiwen said earlier, they had some thoughts in their hearts. Everyone had always believed that the strong were revered. If they had absolute ability, they would definitely want to announce it to the world, so that everyone in the world would revere them. Why would he hide it? So, Yi Qing Luo's sky profound grade suddenly became able to fight evenly with Misty Palace's young master, and even had the ability to gain the upper hand. Something was definitely wrong. Could it be, was it Lord Dizun who was behind this? Was this scene that suddenly appeared in mid-air also the doing of His Majesty the Overlord? Just to let them see how powerful Yi Qing Luo was. From then on, he was even more respectful towards Yi Qing Luo. Although Yu Jiwen was an idiot, as a member of a large force, she naturally knew how to read people's expressions. When he saw that everyone was looking at the horizon, their gazes were obviously not as passionate as before. She could not help but smirk coldly. In my opinion, the 4 great sacred beasts were tamed by the Overlord and then given to her to form a contract with. This sentence was like a stone that set off ripples in everyone's hearts. The 2 stewards of the Yu family had already turned ashen. They didn't know what to say to express their feelings. The current situation. All of them had to stay united. No matter how Yi Qing Luo's ability was contracting a sacred beast real or fake? As long as Yi Qing Luo had the ability to help them leave the auction house, it didn't matter at all. Chapter 3804. This kind of unity, once it was shredded, that would set off a huge wave. But, as long as Yi Qing Luo was here, the matter regarding the 4 sacred beasts was a fact. That was the only hope in everyone's hearts. As long as there was this hope. This was the belief in their hearts. This point, no matter how Yu Jiwen racked her brains, she probably wouldn't have thought of this point. She only knew that her words had achieved the goal which she wanted, and that was enough. The smile on her face gradually enlarged, complacent and satisfied. That delicate and pretty face, because of this smile, looked extremely repulsive. Moreover, no one knows if what is shown is the illusion which Yi Qing Luo specially wanted us to see, or the Overlord wants us to see. Yu Jiwen said another sentence with deep meaning. Everyone's hearts suddenly trembled. Their gazes turned towards the sky in unison, looking at the scene of the intense battle. This was an illusion. This was fake. There was a voice in their hearts telling them, such a realistic scene, linking it to Yi Qing Luo's performance in front of them previously. This definitely couldn't be fake. But, listening to Yu Jiwen's words, there was another voice in their hearts telling them. What Yu Jiwen said might not be wrong. You. Who do you think you are? Suddenly, a crisp and soft voice was heard, but that voice contained traces of coldness. Following that, they saw a petite figure, speedily rushing towards Yu Jiwen. The speed was so fast that no one could react in time. Yu Jiwen only felt a sharp pain on her face. She screamed, covering her face, as she curled up on the ground in pain. Blood flowed along her fingertips, all over the ground. Yu Jiwen screamed in terror, "My face! My face! My face!" She was on the verge of breaking down, as her voice was hoarse and sharp. But her hands were unable to cover the blood which seeped out from her face. "Ah, slut! You slut!" Yu Jiwen felt the blood rolling down her face, that thick liquid, warm and moist. Yu Jiwen was on the verge of breaking down. Who do you think you are? How dare you slander Kitty's big sister? The petite figure standing in front of Yu Jiwen looked at Yu Jiwen arrogantly. That pair of big, round, and spirited eyes contained a coldness that did not match her appearance at all. Even though she was petite, she could only look up at Yu Jiwen. His aura was able to easily suppress Yu Jiwen. Kitty Lee snorted coldly. With one hand on her hip and the other pointing in Yu Jiwen's direction, she said arrogantly, "A scum like you is worthy of being jealous of Kitty Lee's sister. How dare you slander Kitty's big sister? Kitty will tear your mouth apart." Her slender fingers and sharp nails were stained with traces of blood. "Ah, bitch. It's you. It's you." Yu Jiwen glared at Kitty Lee's nails with a venomous gaze. Immediately after, she pounced in the direction of Kitty Lee. When Yu Jiwen moved her hand away from her face, she felt a chill run down her spine. Only then did the crowd see clearly that Yu Jiwen's face had a few extremely obvious bloodstains. There was also a thick liquid that slid down along the bloodstains. The bloodstains ran directly from Yu Jiwen's forehead to her chin. It was as if she had been scratched by a cat. Yu Jiwen's pretty face was completely disfigured. Chapter 3805. Because of Yu Jiwen's ferocious and ignorant actions just now, most of the profound practitioners of the various great forces had already eliminated Yu Jiwen from the list of potential future daughter-in-law in their hearts. Now that they saw Yu Jiwen's disfigured face, they dispelled that thought. Like Yu family, although they weren't considered as a large family. But they were after all a cultivator family and had a bit of foundation. If Yu Jiwen didn't do such a thing, she would be able to marry a suitable family or climb up to other large powerhouses' young masters. But which large powerhouse's cultivator family would choose a brainless and disfigured lady? It could be said that from today onwards, Yu Jiwen was absolutely an abandoned chess piece of Yu family. Various large powerhouses' cultivators' thoughts were indeed not wrong. Yu family's few representatives had totally no intention to bother about Yu Jiwen. Even after Yu Jiwen pounced towards Kitty Lee, but was instead sent flying by Zomo's kick. Not only did he not stand up for Yu Jiwen, he even cupped his fists together towards Kitty Lee's direction. Yu Jiwen's actions have already seriously affected Yu family. Moreover, Yu Jiwen has been disobedient several times. So I represent Yu family to apologize to young Mississippi. Whatever young Miss wants to do to her, Yu family will absolutely not interfere. The meaning in his words was to completely give up on Yu Jiwen. When Yu Jiwen heard that, her expression changed immediately. Of course, her face was now blurred by blood, so it was impossible to see her expression. But from her hysterical howl, one could tell that her expression had changed greatly. "Great steward you dare? Great steward Yu gave a cold humph. Yu Jiwen immediately looked towards second steward Yu. Second steward Yu also indifferently shifted his gaze away. The meaning was already very obvious. Yu Jiwen's fingers tensed and bent. Her face, which was filled with blood, was sinister and terrifying. "How dare you? I'm Yu family's second miss. How dare you? How dare you?" She couldn't believe that she had become an abandoned chess piece. What she did wasn't wrong. She should expose that slut Yi Qing Luo's true face. Let everyone see clearly that slut Yi Qing Luo's true face. A slut who only knew how to rely on men and that face to achieve her goals. On what basis did she get everyone's respect and reverence? As if he was a god. She was only trying to save everyone from being deceived by that slut Yi Qing Luo. What right did the Yu family have to abandon her? Yu Jiwen's heart was full of hatred. She curled her hands and slowly moved them to her face. He pressed his hands on the wound. The thick liquid stained her hands. Suddenly, as if she had gone mad, she glared fiercely at Kitty Lee's direction. "It's you. You ruined me. You ruined my face, so they treated me like a sacrificial pawn. It's all because of you. There was madness in Yu Jiwen's eyes. She suddenly rushed towards Li. He continued to shout, even if I lose this face, I won't let you have an easy time. Until now, Yu Jiwen had not realized where she had gone wrong. No, to be more precise. She did not think she was wrong at all. She only felt that she had lost her beauty. Only then would the Yu family give up on her. He had completely forgotten how much influence his actions had on the Yu family. He had completely forgotten about it. The Yu family didn't care about her face at all. Looking for death. Before Yu Jiwen got close to Kitty Li, she was met with a raging wave of majestic palm wind. Chapter 38:06. In front of Kitty Li, that black-robed young man's sleeves were fluttering. His raised palm was surrounded by a horrifying chi wave, which was lingering in his palm bit by bit. The young man raised his brows slightly. Exquisite facial features, captivating phoenix eyes, with an evil charming cold arc. He was lazy and cold at the same time. The entire person was emitting a kind of cold evildoer's imposing manner. These two completely different feelings, when placed on him, were extremely compatible. Zhou Mo stood in front of Kitty Li in an absolutely protective manner. Kitty Li popped her little head out from Zhou Mo's back, making a funny face at Yu Jiwen. That's right. Still want to make a move on Kitty Li? Ha, looking for death. Saying that, her little claws moved towards Zhou Mo's back. Go. Go. Beat her to death, beat this bad woman who slandered my sister to death. Zhou Mo's arm, which was blocking Kitty Li behind him, stiffened for a moment. Why did he feel? Kitty Li's tone seemed to be closing the door to release the dog's feeling. Woo! Yu Jiwen was so angry that her eyes turned red. She clutched her chest. Her internal organs had been ruptured by that palm strike just now. The moment she moved, she felt as if her body was being torn apart by an excruciating pain. Why were those sluts always willing to stand in front of them, in an absolutely protective manner, protecting them? Whereas she could only fight on her own. Even her own family members wanted to abandon her. Why was this so? This was not fair. She was not reconciled. Everything that little Qing Luo did was merely what she wanted to do. It has nothing to do with you bunch of people. Zhou Mo didn't even look at Yu Jiwen, as his gaze swept across the various powerhouses cultivators in disdain. His brows were filled with mockery. Stop pasting gold on your faces, little Qing Luo doesn't need your gratitude, your repayment, so. Don't think of anything, you treat little Qing Luo as your life's savior. That means you value little Qing Luo, and feel that little Qing Luo feels honored. Zhou Mo's words were rough, but extremely reasonable. Little Qing Luo doesn't owe you anything, so don't use that kind of dirty thoughts to guess little Qing Luo's motive. Various powerhouses cultivators were berated as their expressions changed. All of them looked at Zhou Mo with a strange expression. However, no one refuted him. This was because they couldn't refute Zhou Mo's words. The other point was that Zhou Mo's strength was obvious to all. This trio that had appeared out of nowhere had combat power that was off the charts. The elder coughed lightly and tried to smooth things over. Young master is right. Madame D doesn't owe us anything. She's willing to fight with all her might for us, who aren't important to her. How can we question her behind her back? Old B immediately said, that's right. Madame D doesn't owe us anything. How could we slander Lady D behind her back? Suspect Madame D. Besides, if the Emperor Madame was really an ordinary woman, why would the Overlord fall in love with her? A woman who can catch the eye of His Majesty must be the most beautiful woman in the world. These words of flattery caused Kitty Li's expression to soften considerably. This was a step. The profound practitioners of the various great powers naturally followed this route. One by one, they shook their heads in guilt, expressing that they shouldn't have suspected Yi Qing Luo, etc. These remarks reached Yu Jiwen's ears. Chapter 3807. She had finally managed to incite the crowd. She had finally exposed Yi Qing Luo's true colors. Because of this, she was even disfigured and even abandoned by the Yu family. In the end, she was unable to cause any harm or influence to Yi Qing Luo. Then what did all her sacrifices amount to? Yu Jiwen's heart was boiling with anger. She was unable to walk out from her own anger and her own world. Yu Jiwen hugged her head as she screamed hysterically, filled with unwillingness, venting the anger in her heart. However, the current Yu Jiwen, no one wanted to bother about her, and no one wanted to bother about her. What a joke. Yu Jiwen was obviously not on good terms with the imperial madam. At this critical juncture, if anyone showed a different attitude towards Yu Jiwen, they would definitely be punished. Would that mean standing on Yu Jiwen's side and going against the imperial madam? Who would be so silly? Sacrificing herself for a fool who didn't know how to read the situation. Yu Jiwen hugged her head as she screamed. She could clearly see the disdainful gazes from the surrounding. Those gazes were like needles stabbing into him, causing him endless pain. Zhou Mo frowned as he looked at the sinister-looking Yu Jiwen. His eyes were icy cold as he spat out two words, noisy. Tightly, he raised his palm. An invisible force gripped Yu Jiwen's neck tightly. Yu Jiwen only felt a suffocating tightness in her throat. She could no longer make any sound. Zhou Mo didn't bother about her as he casually threw her aside. Yu Jiwen's hands were stained with blood as she clutched her neck, her petite body kept rolling on the ground. And blood, spilling out from the corner of her mouth. She opened her mouth but not a single word came out. Look. Quickly look. Suddenly, Executive Elder A cried out in surprise and joy, that's the Overlord. When they heard the words, Overlord, almost everyone's action was to raise their heads at the same time, looking at the image in the sky. Although, from Yu Jiwen's words, they had some doubts as to whether the image they saw was real or fake. Moreover, this was the Overlord's consciousness space. Why hadn't they seen the Overlord from the start till the end? Now that they heard the Overlord appeared in the image, everyone's hearts were boiling. The moment everyone looked up, he only managed to catch a glimpse of a purple-clothed figure that disappeared in a flash. Although, it was only for an instant. But everyone was extremely certain that it was Dmo Xian, the Overlord without a doubt. Because in this world, only the D-Zun alone could make people feel like 10,000 years with just a glance. But some people raised their heads a little too late. He did not see the figure that disappeared in a flash like a banished immortal. However, he saw an even more shocking scene. In an instant, some profounders exclaimed with surprise. Look over there. The unstoppable profound energy spread out in all directions. In the air, the rippling layers of air waves also intertwined with this profound energy. Ugh! The Nether Prime only felt that his body, mind, and organs all seemed to be tightly pressed by a formless power. His face contorted in pain. Under this violent profound energy, his body fell heavily to the ground. He knelt on one knee and clutched his chest with one hand. He tried his best to raise his head and stared at Yi Qing Luo. In front of him, however, was the young girl's smile that was like a flower, her enchanting and beautiful face that could topple cities. The young lady's pink lips curled slightly as she slowly spat out a word, break, boom. The alluring red glow instantly wrapped around Yuzun's body and exploded. The violent profound energy struck onto Yuzun's body. Yuzun spat out a mouthful of blood from this terrifying energy. Chapter 3809. Yu Lord's pupil started to slacken. In the blur, he could faintly see a young lady landing in front of him, her clothes fluttering in the wind, like a red lotus. She gave him a light smile. Thick profound energy and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that lingered around her body covered her beautiful face. Lord was unresigned and wanted to open his mouth. But what followed was unbearable pain. Before he fell into darkness, Lord only had time to see those 5 battle pets baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, opening their mouths, revealing their sharp fangs as they pounced towards him. At the same time, Yiqing Luo saw Lord shut his eyes. In front of her eyes, there was an instant of fierceness. The short moment of dizziness and loss of strength made her petite body sway slightly. Her breathing, which was treading in the air, was also slightly unstable. She forced herself to stay conscious, trying to stabilize her state of mind. But the moment she took a breath, the profound heart jade in his chest fiercely surged out, and an intense pain was felt. That pain made it difficult for her to breathe. Ugh! Along with the pain intensified. She didn't have any extra consciousness to maintain her body. Her petite body suddenly went limp as she fell from midair. Yiqing Luo didn't even have the energy to let her battle pets come over to receive her. Suddenly, her falling body was hooked by someone's waist. The elegant sandalwood scent, mixed with an obvious blood stench, seeped into her nostrils. Immediately, that person's large palm pressed on her chest. A warm, profound energy, like a spring, poured into her body. This energy was very gentle. Bit by bit, it dispersed the pain in her body. Her breathing calmed down a little. Her head was still a little giddy. "It's all right, it's over." The man's mellow and gentle voice rang beside her ear. It was accompanied by the man's warmth, enveloping her entire body. The next moment, her pink lips were captured by someone. The warm touch, gentle and affectionate. Yiqing Luo was stunned and was just about to ridicule. This man was actually so anxious. She had just ended the battle, covered in blood and in a state of exhaustion, but he still didn't forget to take advantage of her. However, the medicinal fragrance that floated into her mouth made her stop vomiting. The man used his tongue to push the pill into her mouth and left her lips. His broad and warm palm gently covered her head. The pill entered his throat and entered his body. Yiqing Luo smiled, her pale face was filled with weakness. Between her slightly open brows, there was a hint of coquettishness. Between the pupils, reflecting the man's magnificent beauty, she smiled even more happily. "It seems that my body has really overloaded." With that, he sighed again. She raised her arm and hooked it around the man's neck. "Didn't I say that I would let you enjoy the feeling of being protected by me? But now, I'm being protected by you instead." Dmo Xian held her wrist and pulled her into his arms. "No, I'm protected. My little Luo is really great." Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a smile. The exhaustion of her body made her smile a little weak. Dmo Xian pressed her head into his arms and comforted her softly. "Take a rest first, I'm here, don't worry." Yiqing Luo rubbed her head against his chest, smelling the familiar and reassuring scent. Indeed, it made her exhausted body and mind relax. The moment she relaxed, she felt dizzy and heavy. Just at this moment, suddenly, the 5 battle pets all gave a hurried beast roar. Chapter 38:10. Dmo Xian looked towards the direction of the voice. The person in his arms also raised her head in a daze from the commotion as she rested her chin on Dmo Xian's body as she looked over. In the auction, everyone was concentrating their attention on that battle on the screen. They saw Lord Yu lying on the ground, on his last breath. Various powerhouses cultivators couldn't help but started cheering. There were even some who started shouting, "Long live Madame D, long live Overlord," etc. Yu Jiwen was also watching this scene. She couldn't move nor was she able to make a sound. But she was conscious as she saw Yi Qing Luo defeating Lord Yu. She saw those people displaying agitation and respect towards Yi Qing Luo. Her heart was going crazy with jealousy. Just as everyone was raising their arms and cheering. Suddenly, they saw 5 battle pets howling towards the direction of Lord Yu, who was on his last breath. Before they could see clearly what had happened, the sky suddenly flashed with lightning and thunder. The image in the sky was also shattered by the thunder and lightning. In an instant, it disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. What's going on? Why can't we see anything? What on earth happened? Why can't we see the Overlord's consciousness space? Did he meet with some danger? Earlier, what was Madame D's battle pets reminding us about? Why did the scene stop? Surely not, surely not. Some unforeseen event has happened? The moment the scene disappeared towards the unknown, everyone started to feel uneasy. Rumble, all of a sudden, the entire building of the auction hall shook violently. The ground started to sink downwards, slowly collapsing down. Everyone was shocked as they immediately stabilized their bodies. But they saw a black glow swiftly enveloping over from the horizon. It was like a huge dark cloud, enveloping everything. You all. Look over there. Some cultivators with sharp eyes saw the abnormality in the pitch-black sky as they immediately opened their mouths to remind them. Everyone saw a ball of thick, like black smoke, enveloping a huge lump of something as it descended from the sky. Between the floating smoke, everyone could vaguely tell that it was a man's figure. Boom! That man's body exploded with a thick sinister chi. Then, his body spun rapidly in the air. That's Yuzun. Someone recognized the man's face and cried out in shock. Wasn't the Dark Prime beaten to the brink of death by Lady Monarch in Dizun's consciousness space? Why would he appear here? Moreover, what was that layer of thick black chi on his body that made people shudder? No one had time to think about it. As the Nether Prime spun faster and faster, the sky seemed to be spinning into a huge whirlpool. The vortex was surging with dense evil energy. The terrifying and majestic power seemed to want to devour everything in the world. Swish, 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 the whirlpool surged and suddenly, drops of liquid dripped down. Someone was hit by the liquid. When he touched it, he discovered that it was actually blood. The profound practitioners were still somewhat puzzled. Why would there be blood rain in this vortex? But soon, they got their answer. When the thick blood followed the surging whirlpool and spilled on the ground, Yi Qingtang's eyes widened. The surroundings began to shake violently and collapse. Gravel flew everywhere. The entire auction was gradually being destroyed at an extremely fast speed. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness actually used such a ruthless formation. Chapter 38:11. When Qiao Yinyan heard this, he raised his head and looked at Gue Wu. You know about this array. The original intention of the Palace of Darkness to set up this array was to trap the elites of the Earth domain here. Either you join the Palace of Darkness, or you die in the array. Gue Wu waved his sleeves. A transparent barrier enveloped all the profounders from the various powers. When the rubble fell, it was bounced back by the barrier. He continued, I think, it should be student Yi Qing Luo who forced the Palace of Darkness too much, and the Palace of Darkness intends to make everyone disappear along with the auction. Qiao Yinyan was stunned. Disappear. Gue Wu nodded, yes, disappear. His expression became more solemn. If we are unable to break the array, all of us will be swallowed by this array, and disappear together. How is this possible? Pei Xing squeezed over, his face filled with astonishment. Sprinkling some blood can make the array swallow us. His blood is not an ordinary cultivator's blood, but a rare high-leveled cultivator's blood. Gue Wu said, moreover, the Palace of Darkness has always used a sinister forbidden secret art to set up this array. And using the blood as a medium, to activate the array. Gue Wu's voice deepened. The reason why the forbidden secret art is forbidden, is because, once it is activated, the casualties and losses, are extremely serious. This array, was originally sinister. In all directions, there were evil yin qi lingering around. Those whose minds were unstable, would be affected by this evil yin qi. Now, with the addition of a high-level cultivator's blood as a medium, and using the forbidden art to activate the array. If they didn't break the array, then they could only be swallowed by this array. Gue Wu's voice wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft either. The various powerhouses' cultivators mostly heard some of it. All of their expressions changed. They looked at the huge stone buildings which fell from the sky in horror, and looked at the shaking and collapsing ground beneath their feet. Their faces were filled with panic. Indeed so. Suddenly, a deep and dignified voice rang. It was a very soft, very low voice, but it revealed a dignified manner which made one unable to help but bow down to it. Immediately, everyone saw that the sky which was covered by the thick black qi, slowly revealed a gap. The profound light was like the blossoming sun, parting the clouds and seeping out. Two figures walked out from the light. It's the Overlord. And Madame D. The profound practitioners were wild with joy as they looked at the two people who had appeared. Their eyes flickered with the light of hope. Qiao Yinyan, Pei Xing, and the others immediately looked over. When he saw the red-clothed girl, her skirt fluttering in the wind, the dazzling light refracting under the dark light. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. Previously through the images, he saw Yiqing Luo falling into Dmo Xian's arms. They were all extremely worried. Now that he saw Yiqing Luo safe and sound, they were finally relieved. The person who spoke just now was Dmo Xian. His gaze was deep as he looked at Yuzun, who was wrapped in thick black gas. His thin lips pursed slightly. This is going to be troublesome. The girl beside him raised her head slightly. Her slightly pale face carried a noble and elegant smile like that of a fairy from the 9 heavens. Chapter 38:12. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he looked at Yiqing Luo lovingly. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she met his gaze with a smile. You're so noble and bright, but that person is a rat in the gutter, how can you be compared? Dmo Xian's brows overflowed with a smile as his voice was deep and magnetic. What Madame said is extremely true. The word Madame made Yiqing Luo's cheeks blush slightly. Her heart was thumping uncontrollably. Even the fatigue on her body had dissipated by quite a bit. The two of them landed outside the enchantment which Gue Wu and the others had conjured. Gue Wu took a look at Yiqing Luo and frowned as he asked, "What's going on?" Yiqing Luo shook her head, expressing her daze. Speaking of what was going on, she was also very curious about what had happened. At that time, she was exhausted and rested in Dmo Xian's arms for a while. Then she heard her little companion's warning howls. She and Dmo Xian looked towards the direction of the sound. They were only able to see. Yuzun, who had no strength to resist, was actually swept away by a ball of dense evil qi. That gust of evil qi, without any warning, dashed out of Dmo Xian's consciousness space. She and Dmo Xian rushed out of the consciousness space in time, only to see this scene in front of them. Your body. Gue Wu's brows creased even tighter. Yiqing Luo smiled as she interrupted his words. I'm fine, just exhausted, too much energy. I'll be fine after a short rest. She glanced sideways and looked at Dmo Xian's side profile. She said half jokingly and half seriously, I'm someone who wants to protect my man, I won't fall so easily. Dmo Xian's large palm hugged her tightly. can you stop showing off your affection at this critical juncture? Zhou Mo rolled his eyes. Yiqing Luo glanced at him sideways. You make it sound like, at this critical juncture, you didn't pull my kitty to show off your affection. She took a glance at Zhou Mo's hand which was wrapped around Kitty Li's waist. Kitty Li was like an exploding kitten as she suddenly bounced out from Zhou Mo's arms. Her little body immediately dashed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Kitty Li won't show off her affection with a frivolous man. Zhou Mo, who had lost his warm and fragrant body. Damn it, I shouldn't have said so much. Yiqing Luo smiled as she stroked Kitty Li's little head, then raised her head and looked at the array barrier, at those cultivators who were looking at her and Dmo Xian with a hopeful expression. His gaze finally landed on the executive elder. Our top priority now is to break this formation and leave the auction. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth and her tone was very steady and extremely dignified. Moreover, we don't have much time left. This auction will be swallowed up very soon, and if we are not able to break the array before it is completely swallowed up, then all of us will be buried along with the auction. The profound practitioners of the various great forces gritted their teeth. We will definitely cooperate with the Imperial Madam if you have any ideas. I don't have a solution. When Yiqing Luo said this sentence, everyone's eyes were filled with disappointment. However, her next words immediately followed. However, there will soon be a way to break out of the formation. But before that, I want all of you to protect your own lives. The various powerhouses' cultivators' emotions were like a roller coaster. When they heard Yiqing Luo's last sentence, all of them were almost touched. Chapter 38:13. Yiqing Luo didn't want their gratitude. If you can't even protect your own life, then you deserve to die here. The profound practitioners of the major forces all wore different expressions on their faces. She was embarrassed and embarrassed. Alright, they thought too highly of themselves. They really thought that Yiqing Luo was worried about them. Yiqing Luo ignored their thoughts. She stood side by side with Dmo Xian, looking at Yuzun who was wrapped in black qi. Blood was still splattering. It was as if it wanted to suck all the blood from the Dark Lord's body dry. She frowned slightly and asked in a low voice, Yuzun is the young master of Tenyu Palace. Are the people behind Tenyu Palace really willing to sacrifice their own son? Over at the Palace of Secluded Darkness, would there be the so-called willing and unwilling emotions? Dmo Xian lowered his eyes to look at her, his thin lips raised slightly. Yiqing Luo shook her head, no. It was said that even a vicious tiger would not eat its cubs. The people behind the scenes of the Dark Abyss Palace were inhumane. No matter what, they would protect their own son. Who could have thought that, in order to achieve his goal, he would even sacrifice his own son? I followed the mutated beasts and found the medium to control the corpse puppet goo. Through that medium, I think I should be able to find the formation core. Yiqing Luo recalled what had happened before she was forcefully dragged into the consciousness space by Yuzun. She held on to Dmo Xian's arm. Ah Xian, let's go over there to take a look. Dmo Xian looked at the young lady's extremely pale face. His brows were filled with heartache. Can you hold on? Yiqing Luo smiled at him. Even you can hold on. I'm just a little tired, so naturally I can hold on. Dmo Xian's eyes flickered slightly. Don't even think of rebutting. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and her slender fingers gently pressed on his chest. Her fingertips slowly circled around his chest. The smell of blood on your body can't be concealed. Dmo Xian was injured. This was something that Yiqing Luo knew from the start. And then, because of her, Dmo Xian suffered another palm strike. The injuries on his body were not lighter than hers. Dmo Xian's eyelashes trembled slightly. He smiled faintly and then sighed, as if there was nothing he could do. His shimmering peach blossom eyes seemed to be filled with a pool of spring water, extremely doting. The girl also raised her head slightly, and her long and narrow eyes curved upwards, outlining an exquisite and flirtatious flower pattern. Her red dress made her look even more like a blazing sun. The two of them stared at each other. The entire atmosphere of the battlefield was filled with danger. They were all affected by the atmosphere. It was as if they could only see each other in this world. It could no longer accommodate anyone else. When Zhu Wuxin followed the aura and rushed over, this was the scene he saw. His hurried footsteps suddenly came to a halt. His pitch-black eyes stared fixedly at the picturesque scene in front of him. The rare irritation on his face slowly disappeared from his eyes. He just looked at Yiqing Luo. He looked at the gentleness in the girl's eyes and the obvious love. There were no ripples in his eyes. However, his entire body exuded a gloomy and sorrowful aura that no one could ignore. After a long while, he clenched his fists. He allowed his nails to embed into his palm. Red Clarity Pavilion. Pavilion Master. Suddenly, someone cried out in surprise with a tone of reverence. This voice attracted quite a number of people's gazes. Qiao Yinyan and Pei Xing also looked over. Chapter 38:14. From that image, when he saw the battle between Yiqing Luo and Lord Yu, Qiao Yinyan started to suspect Zhu Wuxian. But when Qiao Yinyan walked closer to Zhu Wuxian, he saw the emotions which he couldn't restrain in time. The words which were at the tip of his tongue were stuck in his throat. What kind of gaze was that? He couldn't use words to describe it. More accurately, very few people were able to see the extremely faint emotions in Zhu Wuxian's eyes. Only those who had the same experience were able to see the emotions under the calmness. Right. Aren't you with all Luo? Why did you only appear now? Pei Xing followed closely behind. His dark golden eyes were filled with displeasure as he looked at Zhu Wuxian. Qiao Yinyan raised his hand, blocking Pei Xing's interrogation. He raised his eyes and saw the sweat on Zhu Wuxian's forehead. He should be very anxious. To be able to make the legendary mysterious powerhouse, Red Clear Pavilion's pavilion master sweat and pant slightly. It was enough to prove that Zhu Wuxian had rushed over at the fastest speed after he sensed Yiqing Luo's presence. His concern towards Yiqing Luo was no less than theirs. Moreover, in the depths of Zhu Wuxian's eyes, that undetectable emotion. It was obvious that Zhu Wuxian had feelings for Yiqing Luo. What were you doing earlier? Did you see the image of all Luo in the space of consciousness? Qiao Yinyan asked. Zhu Wuxian's gaze didn't shift away from Yiqing Luo. His thin lips moved slightly as he replied, I saw it. Secluded Palace's motive is very obvious. I hope that at this moment, you can put aside the grudges between you and the Overlord. If the both of you work together, you will definitely be able to break this array. Qiao Yinyan said. Zhu Wuxin's gaze finally shifted to him. That gaze was like frost. Qiao Yinyan's brows creased tightly, but he wasn't scared off by that gaze as he persisted. The battle in the space of consciousness has already exhausted all Luo's energy. You also want to end this chaotic battle earlier, right? If we drag on, this auction will be swallowed by the array. All of us will die here, including all Luo. Qiao Yinyan specially added the last 4 words. But he didn't get Zhu Wuxian's reply. He pursed his lips and was about to speak. The red-robed man turned around and walked towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's direction. Before he left, he said, there's no need for him. I alone am enough. He didn't need a venerable sovereign. Qiao Yinyan was startled as he looked at Zhu Wuxin's back. He was in a trance for a moment. It was as if his memories had returned to a long time ago, the memories that he had sealed away. The surrounding cultivators' exclamations naturally attracted Yiqing Luo's attention. Yiqing Luo naturally detected Zhu Wuxian's approach. She gently stroked Dmo Xian's hand, motioning him not to be jealous. He quickly turned around and looked at Zhu Wuxian. Do you still remember the position of that vine just now? If we follow that direction, we might be able to find the eye of the formation. Yes. Zhu Wuxian's eyes met hers, and he looked at her face without blinking. Then, he said word by word, "You owe me another favor." Yiqing Luo had yet to react to the meaning behind his words. Zhu Wuxian had already leapt into the air. The blazing red robe was like a burning flame. His sleeves moved. Boundless profound energy spread out in all directions. Chapter 38:15. The auction, which was collapsing ceaselessly, also stopped its restlessness because of this. Various powerhouses cultivators felt that the ground beneath their feet was no longer shaking as they heaved a sigh of relief. One by one, their gazes were all gathered on Zhu Wuxian. Yiqing Luo also raised her head as she looked at Zhu Wuxian. She was still wondering what Zhu Wuxian's intention was. His gaze didn't even have time to land on Zhu Wuxian. Her wrist was grasped by a broad and thick palm. Immediately after, she was pulled into the man's warm and firm embrace. Her head was pressed onto his chest by the man's large palm. Above her head, the man's slightly dissatisfied voice floated down, "Eyes, where are you looking at?" Yiqing Luo was pressed into his arms and had no way to raise her head as her voice sounded a little dull. "I'm looking at what he wants to do." "What can he do?" "Snatch the limelight." Dmo Xian scoffed disapprovingly as he suppressed his voice with an overbearing CEO's tone. "If he wants to snatch, let him snatch. Anyway, if your eyes don't look at him, then he's a loser." Yiqing Luo, what on earth was this? What snatched the limelight? She was only curious why Zhu Wuxian said that he owed him another favor. Her man was suddenly jealous. Yiqing Luo ridiculed in her heart. She heard the man's chilly voice, "Why?" "Very worried about him. Want to help him." Yiqing Luo. At this juncture, wasn't it the time to be jealous? Furthermore, normally speaking, worrying was also normal. No matter what, Zhu Wuxian was considered as her friend. But in front of Dmo Xian's gloomy face, Yiqing Luo naturally didn't dare to say these words. She only rubbed her little head against his chest as she explained in a gentle voice, "Before I was swept into the consciousness space, I used the strange beast to search for the direction of the array core. Zhu Wuxian was there too, so I was thinking. If he had found the array core after I was swept into the consciousness space." Ha! The man who floated down from above her head gave a cold snort. Yiqing Luo wanted to say something but heard him continuing, "He's already found it, so you don't need to worry." He found it. Yiqing Luo struggled for a moment and used her little head to push against his hand. "I just want to take a look at the situation and absolutely don't have any other thoughts. In my heart and in my eyes, the only person I can see is my dearest Xian." The man's aura softened a little. The giant palm above his head retracted decisively. Yiqing Luo. So he was just trying to make her act coquettishly and act cute, calling him a few nice words. This man, how childish. However, it was so childish that she felt sweet in her heart. Yiqing Luo pushed his hand away as she raised her head and looked towards Zhu Wuxian's direction. Zhu Wuxian spread open his arms, suddenly stretching out his 5 fingers. Then, a shrill howl was heard. Chapter 38:16. Yiqing Luo heard the mournful cries for help. 3 black lines appeared on her forehead. It really was Shadow's egg. Abnormal beast bulbul. Why did it turn into its original form and was caught by Zhu Wuxian? What did Zhu Wuxian want to do by catching the strange beast? She was still wondering. A man's light voice was heard from behind. He should be intending to make use of the strange beast to find the direction of the array eye. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. What do you mean? Now that the array has been activated in advance because of Lord Yu's blood, in order to find the array eye, we need to make use of the strange beast's characteristics. Dmo Xian said, but under this kind of profound cultivator's blood and secret arts, as long as the strange beast touches the array eye, I'm afraid it will be swallowed by the evil qi. Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. That was Shadow's contracted war pet. Moreover, the mutant beast had come here to help her. She immediately dashed towards Zhu Wuxian's direction. Zhu Wuxian, wait. The young lady's clear voice made Zhu Wuxian's body stiffen. Immediately after, the strange beast in his hand was scooped over by the young lady. Wah, heroine. That scared the ball. The strange beast was so frightened that it pounced into Yi Qing Luo's arms and wailed loudly. That mechanical voice sounded a little ear-piercing when it cried. Yi Qing Luo grabbed the ball's thin hand and hung it up. Don't cry. Be quiet. The strange beast twitched, feeling aggrieved. It almost became a test subject and yet it didn't cry. This was too much of a bully. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and looked at Zhu Wuxian. This ugly beast is my friend's war pet. Moreover, these strange beasts specially rushed over to help me. Although they are ugly, but we can't use their lives to find the array eye. Originally those strange beasts looked at Yi Qing Luo gratefully. When they heard Yi Qing Luo's sentence, the oval-shaped sharp tip started to emit a dark and heavy qi. Don't ask her how she could tell gratitude from an egg. Anyway, she could tell. Zhu Wuxian's action was stopped. He frowned slightly and looked at her with heavy eyes. It can draw out the eye of the array. It can help, but it cannot harm your life. This was Yi Qing Luo's bottom line. If she used the lives of her companions who had come to help her in exchange for a chance for her to live, then she would not be able to do so. She definitely couldn't do it. Zhu Wuxian pursed his lips as he stared at Yi Qing Luo for a long time before replying coldly, up to you. Then, he turned his head. He fiercely clapped his hands forward, and a majestic wave of profound energy, like a surging wave, smashed away the surging black energy. The Nether Prime's body, which was wrapped in the black aura, also shook for a moment. Then, Chu Wuxin sent out a palm strike. Chapter 38:17. At the moment she saw that old man, Yi Qing Luo was stunned for a moment. She naturally recognized that vine. It was the vine which she saw before she was swept into the consciousness space. Did Zhu Wuxin find the person controlling the vines by following the broken half of the vine? Which meant the goo master who controlled tens of thousands of corpse puppet goo. If she found the goo master, then she would definitely be able to find the location of the array's eye. Young Patriarch Chu, spare me. Spare me. The old man hung in Zhu Wuxian's hands as he begged in fear. Zhu Wuxian's dark eyes glanced at him indifferently. His 5 fingers suddenly exerted force. The old man cried out miserably. Using his actions, he rejected the old man's begging. The old man's entire body twitched in pain. That vine which was filled with densely packed wormholes seemed as though it was going to break at any moment. He knew Zhu Wuxian's character very well and knew that if he fell into Zhu Wuxian's hands, there was no way he could survive. A glint flashed in the depths of his eyes. The vines twisted and he said painfully, "Young Master Chu, you promised to let me go. You promised not to interfere in this matter on account of the fact that you and the Palace of Darkness are partners. How can you go back on your words?" The old man's voice was filled with despair and pleading. It was mixed with agonizing howls. His voice was extremely loud. almost all the various powerhouses cultivators heard it. His words instantly caused the crowd to burst into an uproar. Red Clear Pavilion's Pavilion Master and Secluded Darkness Palace were partners? Then, which side was he helping? The crowd whispered to each other. The person involved was expressionless as he looked at the old man indifferently. But there wasn't any fluctuation in his eyes at all. He totally had no intention to explain. He didn't explain, and the old man continued, Secluded Darkness Palace has already promised young Patriarch Chu that we will do anything for you unconditionally. Young Patriarch Chu, aren't you afraid that you will chill the hearts of those who believe in you by going back on your words? He seemed to be implying something as he turned his head with difficulty and looked towards Yiqing Luo. From the start till the end, Zhu Wu Axian had no intention to explain at all. He totally had no intention to stop the old man. That expressionless face made it hard to tell what he was thinking in his heart. Under the crowd's pointing and discussions, Yiqing Luo, who sensed the old man's gaze, creased her brows slightly. There were already people who were unable to restrain the terror in the depths of their hearts, their brows tightly knitted as they shouted, Hongqing Pavilion Master, shouldn't you give us a reasonable explanation? Since you're from the Dark Palace, why are you here? We thought you were here to help us. Master of the Red Clear Pavilion, you owe us an explanation. What are you trying to do? One of them spoke. The other profound practitioners were also unable to restrain themselves. Countless voices came from all directions. However, it didn't cause any ripples in Zhu Wuxin's emotions. He didn't even look at the people who were questioning him. It was as if it had stopped everything around it. He didn't place anyone in his eyes. He said nothing. In the eyes of the crowd, it was a tacit agreement. The voices of accusation grew louder. The more Yiqing Luo listened, the tighter her slender brows knitted. He couldn't help but tighten his grip on Qiuqiu. This caused Qiuqiu to cry out loudly. Shut up. She frowned and said impatiently. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was dignified and dignified. She was obviously saying it to Qiuqiu. But it made the surrounding voices of discussion to quieten down completely. Hearing her voice, Zhu Wuxin, who had been indifferent all this while, lifted his head and looked at her. Meeting Zhu Wuxian's gaze. Chapter 38:18. Since she had already suppressed everyone's voices, she might as well go along with the current silent atmosphere as she calmly looked at the old man. You said, Zhu Wuxian agreed to spare your life. The old man saw her reaction and immediately cried out loudly, he's a collaborator of Gloomy Palace and he can go back on his words and lay his hands on me. Not to mention the two of you. Who knows, he might even bite you guys in return. When the old man finished his words, Zhu Wuxian's gaze had a slight change. Very faint, so faint that one couldn't detect it at all. His gaze looked at Yiqing Luo without blinking, as though he was waiting for her reaction. Yiqing Luo met Zhu Wuxian's eyes just like that. Following that, she slowly shifted her gaze onto the old man's face as her tone was calm and indifferent. Unfortunately, I don't believe a single word that you say. The complacent look in the old man's eyes instantly froze. Whereas Zhu Wuxian's eyes, which had always been calm and without any ripples, at this instance, the depths of his eyes seemed to be blossoming with a riot of colors. Even his cold and thin lips curled up into an extremely shallow arc. Yiqing Luo continued, because, I know better than you what kind of person Zhu Wuxian is. He disdains to deceive you, and disdains to use lies to deceive anyone. Her lips curled as her smile was filled with ridicule, using this kind of low-level instigation method, trying in vain to sow discord between Zhu Wuxian and me before you die. You've really put in a lot of effort. But, do you really think that everyone in this world is like you? An idiot. The old man's pupils suddenly constricted. His eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo as he secretly clenched his teeth tightly. Yiqing Luo gave a cold laugh, as compared to your gloomy palace, this bunch of sinister rats, I naturally believe in Zhu Wu Axan more. The old man's teeth were grinding so hard that they creaked. Immediately following that, his eyes turned cold as a burst of murderous intent shot out. He suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed it against his chest, grabbing onto the vine which emerged from his body. At the next instant, Yiqing Luo felt a gust of cold wind assaulting her back. The surrounding people drew in a breath of cold air as they cried out in shock. Yiqing Luo's body had already subconsciously made an instinctive reaction. Suddenly she turned sideways. Bang! What greeted him was a chilling wind that seeped into one's bones. Yiqing Luo retreated swiftly. However, the cold wind still brushed past his shoulder. When she saw who it was, she was stunned. Yu Jiwen. In front of him, the person with her arm in a sling, walking like a zombie with a bloody face, wasn't that Yu Jiwen? Towards Yiqing Luo's voice, Yu Jiwen had no reaction at all. She was like a zombie, shaking her body as she pounced towards Yiqing Luo once again. His blood-stained face was devoid of any expression. Even his eyes were empty and lifeless. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and was just about to press on the place where the yin wind had brushed past. The egg-like ball in her arms suddenly transformed into a big mouth in her arms. The sharp fangs and the stench in his mouth gushed into his nostrils. Yiqing Luo almost sent it flying with a slap. He would transform at the slightest disagreement. Who taught it? How disgusting. Yiqing Luo's slap was about to fly out. Just like that, Qiuqiu's big tongue followed her hand and swept across, saliva, sticky her hand. Yiqing Luo. This strange beast was very mischievous. Was it itching for a beating? Chapter 38:19. Corpse Puppet Parasite. Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted. In her mind, she seemed to have understood something. Ugly, is that woman controlled by the corpse puppet parasite? Yiqing Luo stared at Yu Jiwen as she asked. Qiu rolled its big tongue, yes, yes. Earlier when she touched you, she even threw the corpse puppet parasite on you. Luckily I'm around, there's nothing to be afraid of. Qiu's tone was filled with pride. If it had a tail, it would definitely be wagging its buttocks. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she stared at Yu Jiwen. Following that, her gaze shot towards the old man's direction. That old man's final attack. It infuriated Zhu Wu Axan. Zhu Wu Axan directly struck his palm on the old man's chest. It also forcefully chopped off the vine. The old man howled in pain. The vine was like a part of his body. And it was the most important part. Fresh blood came from the deepest part of his body. That skinny face, which was only left with bones, turned increasingly lifeless. But Zhu Wu Axan still left him with one last breath. Right now, he was hanging on Zhu Wu Axan's palm, but his eyes were filled with a sliver of unwillingness and resentment. As though he hadn't expected his final plan. To be destroyed by a useless strange beast. Yiqing Luo frowned. Looked like Yu Jiwen was already dead. Her body had become the corpse puppet parasite's vessel. This was a little troublesome. Hiding in Yu Jiwen's body. Unless the strange beast swallowed Yu Jiwen's body together. Otherwise, the corpse puppet parasite hiding in Yu Jiwen's body would be hard to resolve. Bam! The Yu Jiwen in front of him waved its arms over again. It didn't stop its control just because the vine was broken. Make the corpse puppet parasite stop. Zhu Wu Axan opened his mouth coldly. But the old man spat out, unyielding. And because of this series of episodes, the black qi which had stopped because of Zhu Wu Axan, once again wrapped Yuzun, who was floating in midair. Following that, the entire auction house once again fell into an earth-shaking destruction. Everyone screamed in panic. Yiqing Luo was shaken by the surrounding airflow as her body was on the verge of collapse, unable to stand stably. Yu Jiwen was still attacking her. With every attack, Qiuqiu's tongue would sweep across. It could be seen that Yu Jiwen had made up her mind to use the corpse puppet goo to control her. Yiqing Luo took a look at the chaotic auction. Then, he looked in the direction of the Dark Prime. She pursed her lips, and her gaze finally landed on Qiao Yinyan. Yinyan, let the mutated beast hold Yu Jiwen back. It's best if we can find a way to force the corpse puppet goo out of her body. As she spoke, she tossed the ball in Qiao Yinyan's direction. In the current situation, only mutated beasts were the nemesis of the corpse puppet goo. At the critical moment, Qiuqiu was quite impressive. At the same time when Yiqing Luo threw it to Qiao Yinyan, it shouted at the top of its lungs and used the voice of the mutant beast to summon a group of companions. More than a dozen mutant beasts surrounded Yu Jiwen. Yiqing Luo took the opportunity and speedily headed towards Zhu Wuxian's direction. The moment she moved, his wrist tightened. She was pulled back by the man's arm. Her petite body crashed into Dmo Xian's arms. She heard the man's low and hoarse voice, "Why?" Still intending to run towards him. Yiqing Luo raised her head and met the man's deep eyes. "We must force the direction of the array core from that old man's mouth." Chapter 38:20. Yiqing Luo, this was not the time to be jealous, was it? However, Dmo Xian's peerless countenance was very indifferent, even his voice was a little low and dull. He lowered his head and rested his chin on the girl's shoulder. "What? You can't explain it." Yiqing Luo felt that this voice was very cold. It was so cold that she was shivering. Yiqing Luo raised her head and met Dmo Xian's indifferent gaze. She didn't quite understand what Dmo Xian meant. Generally speaking, Dmo Xian's expression of jealousy belonged to him acting coquettishly and seeking to be appeased. But he would never disregard the occasion and the situation. Because of the trust between them, there was no need for any words or words at all. Therefore, she would cooperate with him and say what he liked and wanted to hear. But this time, Dmo Xian's emotions were obviously not quite right. His almond-shaped eyes, which had always shone brightly, were now covered with a very, very thin layer of mist, making it impossible to see his emotions. She only felt that his emotions were very cold. "Ah, Xian." She pursed her lips and held the hand on her waist. She changed her posture and faced the man. Dmo Xian held onto her slender waist. He held her firmly in his arms. His thin lips slightly hooked, but there was no smile. "I really don't like the way he looks at you." Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he hugged the person in his arms tightly. Naturally, he knew. The person in his arms had feelings for him. He also knew little Luo's attitude towards Zhu Wuxian. However, when he saw Zhu Wuxian's gaze towards Lil Luo, no matter how much he wanted to appear magnanimous and broad-minded, however, he still couldn't help but feel displeased. Such emotions, he should not let Lil Luo know. But when he saw Lil Luo trust Zhu Wuxian without any hesitation, when he saw Zhu Wuxian looking at Lil Luo with that glowing gaze, the emotions that had been suppressed in his heart couldn't be contained anymore. He did not mind showing such emotions to Lil Luo. "I really don't want to." Dmo Xian suddenly loosened his grip on Yiqing Luo. He lowered his head. His black hair flew in the air and fell on both sides of his face. It concealed the emotions on his face. He took 2 steps back. His body exuded an indifferent and cold feeling. "Ah, Xian." Yiqing Luo naturally noticed the change in Dmo Xian's emotions. Dmo Xian raised his head and curled his thin lips at her before shaking his head. nothing, I just feel that this limelight cannot be allowed to be brought out by him alone. He chuckled and looked in Zhu Wuxian's direction. Then, he walked towards Zhu Wuxin. My own woman has to be protected by myself. He was just about to take a step. Suddenly, he felt a soft and delicate body behind him. The girl wrapped her arms around his waist. She pressed her face against his back. Ah, Xian, I am very happy that you have such negative emotions because of me. The girl's voice was very soft and gentle. Clearly, she understood the reason for the change in his mood. She patiently stroked his fur. You have to protect me for the rest of my life. After that, you'll have to help me repay Zhu Wuxin's favor. With just a few words, the gloomy atmosphere in Dmo Xian's heart had completely dissipated. Listening to the girl's soft voice, his mood seemed to have turned better. Even the corners of his lips couldn't help but curl into an arc. Yi Qing Luo let go of his waist and walked in front of him. Chapter 38:21. Looking at the smile on Dmo Xian's face, Yi Qing Luo felt sweet in her heart. This large-sized dog-type pet had an extremely comfortable look when its fur was being smoothed. It made her unable to restrain her laughter. Since you've already decided not to let him be the only one in the limelight, then go ahead. Yi Qing Luo took 2 steps back as she opened up a path, but promise me, you must not force yourself. Dmo Xian's expression had already regained its original lazy and confident look. His lips curled as he gave her a light smile. Her face was reflected in a pair of peach blossom eyes that were as black as ink. I know, you've already thought of a way to find the array. I believe you. Her understanding of Dmo Xian was the same as how Dmo Xian understood her. When she heard Dmo Xian saying, not willing to let Zhu Wuxian be the only one in the limelight. Then thinking back to how he had expressed his dissatisfaction at this juncture. Dmo Xian wasn't someone who didn't know how to analyze the situation. He would do this. He definitely had a way to deal with it. Her words, once again made Dmo Xian's brows tainted with a warm smile. He raised his hand as he rubbed Yi Qing Luo's head. Following that, he leapt forward. Turning into a purple remnant shadow, he speedily neared Zhu Wuxian. Zhu Wuxian had been paying attention to Yi Qing Luo's side, and on seeing Dmo Xian approaching, his eyes deepened. What are you doing here? Dmo Xian's side profile was more magnificent than ever before. His thin lips curled slightly as his peach blossom eyes were suffused with a faint cold intent. But he was smiling. His smile made one feel that it was dangerous and charming at the same time. Leave the following matters to me. He opened his mouth as he wasn't courteous at all. Zhu Wuxian scoffed lightly as his eyes turned slightly chilly. On what basis? The meaning behind his words. This was his credit, and he wanted Yi Qing Luo to owe him a favor. On what basis did Dmo Xian have to make him hand over the result of his hard work the minute he opened his mouth? Dmo Xian tilted his head as his eyes turned sharp, on the basis that I am the one whom Lil Luo likes. His words made Zhu Wuxian's face turn black. But Dmo Xian didn't care. He curled his lips lazily and indifferently. Just now, Lil Luo asked this noble one to help her repay your favor. I'm sure that you don't want this noble one to owe you a favor either. So, stay by yourself. That slightly complacent tone. This made Zhu Wuxian's eyebrows jump. Clenching her fists, she could not help but want to smash Dmo Xian's face. He had to admit it. Dmo Xian's words. This truly dealt a blow to Zhu Wuxian's heart. He couldn't refute Yi Qing Luo's feelings towards Dmo Xian. There was no way to refute the fact that the person Yi Qing Luo liked was Dmo Xian. And Yi Qing Luo even let Dmo Xian repay the favor she owed him. This was obviously treating him as an outsider. As for Dmo Xian, he was one of them. Zhu Wuxin's emotions were clearly fluctuating. Dmo Xian's eyes were tinged with a smile. Handsome face, noble and elegant. His purple robe fluttered in the wind, making him look even more noble. Just at this moment, Dmo Xian suddenly moved. That old man who was originally held in Zhu Wuxian's palm, had already fallen into Dmo Xian's hands. Zhu Wuxian was stunned as his eyes turned chilly. What do you mean? I don't need you for the rest. Dmo Xian said calmly, his side profile still showing an indifferent expression. Zhu Wuxian's chilly eyes were instantly covered with a black glow. He stretched out his hand to snatch that old man away as his voice was filled with anger. What if I say, I want you, the almighty overlord, to owe me a favor? Chapter 38:22. Dmo Xian's words had just landed. A burst of raging profound energy surged wantonly. The old man was exchanged from Zhu Wuxian's hands to Dmo Xian's. The pressure released when the two of them were fighting against each other. His last breath was almost cut off. He felt the surging profound energy from Dmo Xian. He was so shocked that his pupils regained some vigor. It was the vigor of excessive shock. No one was not afraid of death. They were even more afraid of being tortured to death. The reason why he was fearless. He wanted to force Zhu Wuxian to settle him in a fit of anger. But Dmo Xian wouldn't. At a close distance, the old man could clearly see that Dmo Xian's eyes seemed calm, but in fact it was brewing a terrifying profound ray. An indescribable sense of fear invaded his body and mind. Array I. Dmo Xian's thin lips moved slightly. Two words were spat out from his lips. The old man felt as though there was an icy cold big hand tearing his body apart. Swish, a vine stretched out from his body. Dmo Xian directly grabbed that vine and pulled it hard. The old man cried out in pain. The blood vine, under the envelopment of Dmo Xian's profound ray, suddenly turned into a green-colored snake as it sped towards a certain direction in front. No! No! Looking at the direction where the vine was scuttling towards, the old man's eyes widened as he cried out in despair and indignation. The moment the two words came out, he felt a fishy sweetness surging up his throat. A mouthful of blood was spat out. His body then drooped down limply. He had no other energy. The array I is over there. Yiqing Luo kept staring at that direction. The old man's attitude obviously proved that that direction was indeed where the array I was located. She didn't hesitate as she followed the direction where the vine scuttled. The red figure left an afterimage on the horizon as it was faintly discernible. The red profound ray encircled her entire body. The entire sky, which was filled with dark clouds, was lit up by this red glow. Qiao Yinyan, Pei Xing and the others exchanged glances. Following closely behind. Yiqing Luo had not expected Dmo Xian to use such a simple and crude method to search for the array I. Only Dmo Xian would be able to do it. Yiqing Luo had actually thought of this idea before. That vine was the spirit artifact of the witchcraft master's soul contract. Back then, witchcraft goo masters could use vines to control tens of thousands of corpse puppet goo through a formation. Therefore, she was certain from the start. As long as they found the Wu Goo master, they would definitely be able to find the formation core. It was just that, she didn't know how to use the vines of the witch goo master to find the formation core. The cultivators from the major forces all rushed forward as they watched the big shots. No one bothered about Yuzun, who was enveloped by the dense black gas. They looked at each other for a moment. In the end, he decided to bear the pressure and follow the group of big shots. Although they were standing here, the barrier formed by the ghost martial artist was protecting them. But what if the barrier collapsed? The group of big shots was not around. They were in danger. It was safer to follow the boss. Hence, a large group of people chased after Yi Qing Luo and the others on a large scale. The vines moved extremely quickly. It was like a green snake. This continued until they arrived at a rather remote and gloomy ruined courtyard. That vine stopped. Even the old witchcraft master who was being forcefully pulled was also pulled as he fell heavily onto the ground. Yi Qing Luo slowly landed on the ground as her toes touched the ground and stabilized her body. Chapter 38-23. Is that the array eye? Yi Qing Luo looked at that withered tree as her brows rose slightly. Dmo Xian stood behind as he looked over. Yes. How do we destroy that array eye? Yi Qing Luo looked sideways at the man's side profile as she asked. Dmo Xian raised his hand and held her shoulders. Wait, there are helpers outside. Helpers? Yi Qing Luo was puzzled. Who are you referring to? Dmo Xian smiled. You'll know when we get out. He was still keeping her in suspense. Looked like the helpers outside were people she knew. Gue Wu, Zhou Mo, and the rest were already in the array. Who else could help them? Moreover, the person who could help to break such a sinister array was definitely very powerful. She knew someone who was extremely powerful. Who could it be? Just as they were talking, a group of people had already chased up. Qiao Yinyan carried Qiao Qiu, who only had a mouth. His face didn't show any signs of disgust. When he saw that withered tree, he opened his mouth and asked, "Is that the array eye?" "Destroy that array eye and the array will be destroyed, right?" Pei Xing said as he walked towards that withered tree. He even raised his hand as his dark golden pupils were filled with eagerness. "Ah, Xing, stop!" Yi Qing Luo berated sternly as she raised her hand to create a wave of profound wave, blocking Pei Xing's hand. Pei Xing was forced to retreat 2 steps as he looked at Yi Qing Luo in a daze. "Don't move, can't you see the dense evil qi lingering around the array eye?" Yi Qing Luo glanced at him. "If it could be touched and destroyed it will." That wasn't the style of the secluded palace. Ah. Pei Xing was stunned. Then what should we do? Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. Her vision shifted as she looked at the huge collapsing buildings. Her 5 fingers clenched even tighter. If she didn't speed up, this auction was really going to be swallowed by the array. The helpers that Xian mentioned, when would they take action? As though he sensed the fluctuation of her emotions. Dmo Xian's large palm patted lightly on her back, comforting her. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and looked at the man beside her. Just as he was about to ask. At this moment, a wave of energy vibrated around the withered tree. Like a few invisible waves, they shook off the surrounding fluctuations. The vines that were entangled above were chopped into several pieces with a crackling sound. The Wugu master who was dying on the ground. Even cries of pain could be heard. Just as the vines broke, she closed her eyes forever. At the same time, the Yu Jiwen, who was being harassed by countless aberrations. His body fell straight to the ground. In the blink of an eye, the corpse turned into a pile of white bones. Then, everyone saw about 100 corpse puppet goo crawl out from the white bones and quickly crawl towards the witchcraft goo master on the ground. The profound practitioners of the various forces thought that these corpse puppet goo were using the same trick to control the goo master's body. But he didn't expect, in the blink of an eye, the Wu goo master turned into a skeleton. He was swallowed into the stomach of the goo worm that he had raised. Qiao Yinyan immediately threw the ball in his hand towards the direction of the corpse puppet goo. The last corpse puppet goo, settle those first. The ball's tongue rolled up and its round body pounced towards the direction of the corpse puppet goo. Bam! just as the aberrations were about to eat the last corpse puppet goo. That withered tree suffered a heavy blow. Chapter 38-24. Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian were the closest. When the fluctuation was released, Chen Fang's eyes widened. The two of them retreated swiftly. Immediately following that, the majestic airwave, like a raging wave, surged violently. That withered tree shook more and more, as though it was about to crack. The whistling sound of the wind and waves slapped against everyone's eardrums. Yiqing Luo held Dmo Xian's arm, squinted her eyes and looked at the withered tree. Did the helper you mentioned take action? Dmo Xian nodded slightly. Yiqing Luo frowned tightly. To tell the truth, when he saw that everything around him had been overturned and collapsed by that boundless power, yet that withered tree did not move at all, he felt a chill run down his spine. Yiqing Luo could tell. It was not feasible to destroy the array from the outside. But if they rashly took action, they would also be affected by the lingering sinister qi around the array. How could they destroy this array? Yiqing Luo was deep in thought. Perhaps the helper outside the array was a little too impatient. That withered tree shook violently. The originally withered tree branch, with a kacha sound, actually broke off. That broken branch rolled along with the strong wind. It wildly turned into a sharp blade, directly piercing towards Yiqing Luo's face. The speed of the sharp blade was extremely fast. And the lingering profound ray was very shocking, as though it was going to pierce through the sky. Yiqing Luo only had time to see a trace of silver edge, as it flashed past her eyes. A strong murderous intent spread out in front of her. She wanted to dodge. But it was too late. Immediately, she raised her hand. Her 5 fingers moved, the glower flame fan opened up, blocking in front of her. Bam! The sharp end of the broken branch hit the glower flame fan. But the strength was not as big as she imagined. Sounds of cold air being sucked in were heard from the surrounding. There were also people who were faintly panicking, screaming, "Overlord!" Yiqing Luo's gaze moved, and saw in front of the glower flame fan, that broken branch was firmly held in the palm of a large palm. It was Dmo Xian. He used his own hand to stop that broken branch. Yiqing Luo's pupils slightly widened. He stared at the broken branch in his hand, which was already bleeding. She quickly closes the glowing flame fan and hugs the man's arm with both hands. Xian. In such a situation, it was not impossible for her to block it with the glowing flame fan. Furthermore, based on Dmo Xian's ability, even if he was injured, he could easily repel this broken branch. However, he chose to use the most direct, and also the most stupid method. Dmo Xian moved his fingers. He furrowed his brow slightly. Yiqing Luo's eyes almost turned red. Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt. Dmo Xian let go of the broken branch. His palm had already been scraped by the force of the broken branch. Flesh and blood flew everywhere, looking extremely horrifying. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned even redder as her words started to choke. Are you an idiot? Why are you blocking with your hand? Dmo Xian allowed her to hug his arm anxiously. He lowered his eyes to look at her with a doting gaze. Looking at her anxious and touched expression, he lowered his head again. His chin rested on her hair, the corners of his mouth twitched. Not knowing if it was because of the injury, his voice was a little deep, sounding very magnetic. I didn't think so much. Yiqing Luo didn't know how to answer for a moment. Concern causes confusion. The more worried a person is at the most critical juncture, the more unable to keep calm. Almost could only rely on the body's instinct to move. Even the calm Dmo Xian. When he met with her, he was still unable to keep 100% calm. Chapter 38:25. Alright, it's just a small injury, it's nothing. DMO Xian comforted her warmly. After we leave the auction, compensate me properly. Yiqing Luo was both angry and amused as she raised her head and stared at him furiously. You're still joking at such a time. Alright, be good, I'm fine. DMO Xian replied. Yiqing Luo drew out a handkerchief and bandaged his injured hand. Bandaging it. Her gaze was suddenly fixed on the ground, on top of the broken branch. She was stunned as her bandaging hand also stopped. What's the matter? DMO Xian asked puzzledly. Yiqing Luo pointed to the front. Look at that broken branch. That broken branch was intercepted by DMO Xian's bare hands. Then he casually threw it onto the ground. If she didn't remember wrongly, that broken branch should have been stained with DMO Xian's blood. But at this moment, the broken branch was completely clean, without a single trace of blood. Yiqing Luo and DMO Xian looked at that broken branch for a moment, and both of them raised their heads at the same time, looking at each other as they spoke in unison. This is the method to break the array. Blood. That's right. It was fresh blood. This array was extremely sinister. It even used the revered Lord's blood to activate the array. So, as long as blood was used, it would be able to destroy this array core. In order to verify this thought, Yiqing Luo helped DMO Xian to tie the handkerchief as she held the glower flame fan tightly and suddenly shot a hurricane towards that withered tree. The profound rays neared. The thick black chi which lingered around the withered tree bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it twisted upwards. Yiqing Luo leaped up and neared that withered tree from the other side. In a split second, the thick black chi surged and rolled. The dark sky was covered with a layer of hazy fog. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned slightly chilly as her fingers moved and the red profound rays turned into huge waves. The moment the thick black chi was attracted, Yiqing Luo was already nearing the withered tree. The minute she neared, Yiqing Luo felt a dull pain in her heart as a scorching flame started to burn fiercely. Oh! This burning heat was like a raging flame, scorching her internal organs. It was as if he was going to burn her into ashes. She groaned in pain. Her movements stopped in midair. Little Luo, DMO Xian's worried voice drifted into her ears. The man's deep voice was like a warm current that seeped into her heart. It also alleviated the burning sensation in her chest that felt like it was being torn apart. She closed her eyes slightly. He steadied his mind. She turned around and looked in their direction, revealing a faint smile. The hurricane moved. The wind blew her hair, her dress. Like a blossoming rose, incomparably gorgeous. Clearly, his face was so pale. His brows were tightly knitted, as if he was enduring some sort of pain. But she was still smiling. His smile was firm, and it made one's heart surge with lofty sentiments. I'm fine, don't worry. Since I've promised to walk out of the auction in front of everyone, I've promised to destroy the Palace of Gloomy Darkness plan, so I'll definitely do it. Her voice was soft. It was like a feather fluttering in the wind, and it seeped into everyone's ears. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, she took a deep breath and forcefully endured the pain within her body which made her combusted and made her blood boil. He turned into a streak of light and approached the withered tree. The nearer he got. 3 steps, 2 steps, 1 step, Yiqing Luo felt that there was an indescribable impulse surging within her. As though it was summoning her. As though it was urging her to do something. Chapter 38:26. But immediately following that, a burst of raging profound energy suddenly gushed over. That profound glow was majestic as it shook the entire space. It was what Dmo Xian had mentioned. The helper outside the array. The helper over there had started a new round of attack. Yiqing Luo felt this surge of vibration, profound energy attacking her. She instinctively wanted to evade it. But it was too late. The overwhelming profound glow poured down in torrents. Yiqing Luo's fingertips swept swiftly, creating a gust of strong wind to reduce some of the pressure. But what made her surprised was that majestic profound energy kept vibrating, but it didn't cause any harm to her at all. She didn't know if it was an illusion. She vaguely felt a sense of familiarity from this surge of profound energy. Just at this moment, a ray of black dazzling light pierced her eyes under the sky of profound glow. She frowned as she fixed her eyes on it. She saw a palm-sized black hole in the middle of the withered tree, which was emitting a black and dense aura. That black glow was different from the evil qi. But it was a kind of glow which could be seen by the naked eye. Pitch black, but dazzling. What was going on? Earlier she didn't seem to have seen such an eye-catching thing on the withered tree. It's right there. Lass, drip your blood on it. In her mind, old man Song cried out in surprise. His voice had just landed. Yiqing Luo only felt that the boiling blood in her body was boiling hot. As though it was about to gush out from her body. This was her blood. It was affecting her thoughts, making her drip her blood on that withered tree. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Immediately, she lifted her feet and walked towards the withered tree. Under that majestic profound energy vibration, Yiqing Luo slowly raised her arm. She waved her glower flame fan. Her fingertips hurt. Drops of fresh blood slid down, dripping into that black glow. The fishy and sweet smell of blood had a hint of fragrance. When the fresh blood fell into that black hole, rumble, Yiqing Luo's ears only heard a deafening explosion sound. Intense black glow shot out in all directions. Her entire body was entangled in it. Yiqing Luo only felt a squeezing sensation in her chest, causing her throat to gush out a fishy sweetness. It was as if something was tearing inside his body. The pain was unspeakable. But, under this extreme pain, Yiqing Luo actually faintly felt a ray of white light flashing past her mind. It flashed faintly. Something seemed to want her to catch it. She was just about to grab him. The white light disappeared in an instant. Tight and popped up in her mind again. It was as if something was deliberately attracting and seducing her. She concentrated and tried to adjust her consciousness. Bit by bit, she approached the white light. During the chase with the white light, even the pain from the pressure in his body was thrown to the back of his mind. Wisps of red light gradually passed through the thick black gas in the sky and poked their heads out. Boundless brilliance began to envelop the horizon. Everyone's vision was tightly fixed on Yiqing Luo. Right now, Yiqing Luo was their only hope. As long as Yiqing Luo succeeded, they would be able to leave this place. But in everyone's heart, they were perturbed and uneasy. The young lady's hand was pressed on that withered tree. Her eyes were tightly shut and her face was filled with obvious pain. The overlord's mood became increasingly gloomy by the side. He wanted to go forward to help but was held down by Gui Wu. Chapter 38-27. He was afraid that Yiqing Luo wouldn't be able to bear this kind of pain. He couldn't break out of the formation. In the surroundings, the majestic and ferocious dark force was still vibrating wave after wave. On the Nether Prime side, the thick black gas was still flowing along with the blood that was splattering everywhere. The formation eye and the various forces collided with each other. Yiqing Luo's face turned paler by the minute. Originally, he had fought several rounds of battles in the auction and was already exhausted. Moreover, in the space of consciousness, she had used too much power, which was extremely damaging to her body. Now, he was bleeding and suffering from the crushing pain of the withered tree. He chased after the white light in his mind again and again. Yiqing Luo only felt that her consciousness had gradually turned blank and started to blur. His four limbs felt heavy, as if they weighed 1,000 kilograms. That white light seemed to be teasing her. He stuck his head out. On the other side, it appeared indistinctly. She furrowed her brows and her body trembled slightly. His palm, which was pressed against the withered tree, felt a stinging pain. It was as if there was a suction force firmly sucking her palm. Her breathing also gradually became weaker. She couldn't help but furrow her brows as she felt the blood flowing out of her body. Hold on, hold on, hold on, there seemed to be a voice in his mind that kept repeating these 3 words. She no longer had the strength to discern the direction of the sound and the owner of the sound. She only knew that this voice caused her consciousness to become fuzzy, and then she suddenly woke up. Yiqing Luo's breathing became smoother bit by bit. He struggled to maintain his consciousness. Little Luo, Dmo Xian saw the changes in Yiqing Luo's expression as his eyes stared fixedly at Yiqing Luo. His face no longer had the usual noble elegance. His breathing was heavy, and his heart was clenched tightly. He wanted to step forward and help Yiqing Luo share her pain. However, Gue Wu's hand continued to press down on his shoulder. Dmo Xian was very clear. He could not go forward. He could not interrupt Lil Luo air from breaking the formation. Lil Luo had already expended so much energy and put in so much effort to destroy the array I. If he missed this opportunity, everything that Lil Luo had done, all the pain that she was suffering now, was all in vain. Furthermore, Lil Luo's personality. He understood it better than anyone else. If Lil Luo was awake, she would definitely not let him take the risk to come over. Little Luo, Little Luo, The repeated calls were transmitted into Yiqing Luo's ears, who was trying her best to stay awake. She pursed her lips and bit down hard on her lower lip. Until the smell of blood filled his mouth. Only then did she stop moving. The piercing pain made her vision blur. The white light in her mind flickered and floated in front of her. Yiqing Luo's eyes flashed. It was almost instinctive. His consciousness wrapped around it as he searched around it. Boom! His sea of consciousness suddenly fluctuated. It was as if something had exploded. In front of Yiqing Luo, a vast expanse of white light flickered. Then, her body was like a feather, her legs weak and powerless. Boom! His mind buzzed again. Like a tidal wave, the profound strength surged wildly in his body. Wave after wave, they violently squeezed into the profound heart jade. The surging profound energy easily soothed the pain from the squeezing in her body. Replacing it was a relaxed feeling in both body and mind. The surrounding heaven and earth's spiritual qi encircled her body. Chapter 38-28. Boom, another roar was heard. Yiqing Luo's surrounding aura vibrated and turned into circles of ripples as it rippled outwards. Like a tide, the surging profound energy gradually turned into a whirlpool. The alluring red glow intertwined with that whirlpool. It enveloped the young lady's blazing figure. The whirlpool rolled wildly. The red glow was like fire. The aura surged like waves, one after another. This scene instantly caused all the profounders from the various powers to be flabbergasted. There was no way to conceal the shock on their faces. Is this an advancement? Imperial Madam. Imperial Madam actually advanced at the critical juncture of destroying the array core. Not advancement, it's a breakthrough. This is a breakthrough. The various powerhouses cultivators looked at the surging profound glow in the sky. There were large patches of thunder clouds as they gathered swiftly. The crowd was stunned. With thunder clouds, it wasn't just advancement, it was a breakthrough. One must know that a breakthrough was tens of thousands of times harder than advancement. Some people were stuck at the last stage of advancement and might not be able to break through in their entire lives. That was a leap from one profound grade to another. Exquisite Pavilion's two hall masters stared at Yi-Ching Luo's direction as they voiced out the doubts in their hearts, from the aura of her breakthrough. It doesn't seem especially strong. Based on her status as Imperial Madam, this breakthrough should at least be into the legendary realm. Legendary realm, God-mystic realm. Once one stepped into the God-mystic realm, in layman's terms, it meant that one had cultivated to become a god. This was the target which many cultivators were striving for. In the various powerhouses' cultivators' hearts, Yi-Ching Luo's ability had definitely surpassed the god-mystic realm. She was a legend who was on par with the Overlord. But when they heard the two exquisite Pavilion's hall master's doubts, even he was a little stunned. Indeed, Yi-Ching Luo's surrounding profound energy aura seemed ferocious. But in actual fact, it wasn't especially strong. Attracting thunder clouds was definitely a breakthrough. If it was a breakthrough, then it would be a breakthrough from one profound grade to another profound grade realm. Based on Yi-Ching Luo's performance, Yi-Ching Luo's ability should have long entered the spirit profound stage. But Yi-Ching Luo had a breakthrough this time. Surely it couldn't be that Yi-Ching Luo had broken through from the spirit profound realm to the strongest exalted profound realm, right? This was absolutely impossible. Looking at the entire world, it was said that the only person who had reached the exalted mystic realm was the divine emperor who had passed away a long time ago. After that, there was no news of a second person. Even Di Zun. Everyone's guesses about him were only at the divine profound realm. Then, the Lady Emperor's breakthrough this time was from the sage mystic realm to the immortal mystic realm, a breakthrough to become a god. Everyone's heart was still extremely shocked. In the earth realm, the majority of profound practitioners were around the early stage of the sage profound realm. Those who were able to reach the 5th level of the sage profound realm were already rare experts. Moreover, after reaching the profound sky realm and entering the myth realm, the profound sky realm strength would increase tremendously. Every profound rank had 15 ranks to form a great profound rank. The Empress was so young, yet she was able to maintain her sage mystic profound rank 15 to deal with monsters that could wipe them out in a matter of minutes. She was also fighting against the majestic Yuzun. It was already very powerful. As long as Madame D succeeded in her breakthrough, Madame D had become even more powerful. They had even more hopes of leaving this broken array. Various powerhouses cultivators looked at Yi-Ching Luo with eyes filled with hope. Just waiting for Yi-Ching Luo to break through. After the profound chi went round and round, circulating a few rounds, you're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.